Want to kick us off?
Let's kick
Antonia?
it. Yeah. Hello, everyone. Happy New Year. Welcome to our first town hall meeting of 2022. It's always a privilege to be up here with these folks, leading this community together and being able to share this process with all of you. After careful collaborative consideration and discussion, evaluating the risks and identifying our priorities for the summer, we feel that our policy is comprehensive, appropriate, and realistic. Our priorities are to keep the community safe while giving the community of people at camp this summer an experience that is as close to normal as possible, given the nature of Bucks Rock's specific structure and freedoms. We have gotten to this point by looking at the guidelines set forth by the CDC and American Campus Association, which the links are in the chat, and also getting to the point of agreement among us up here today. The links will also be posted on our website. Before we go into the policy and answer the specific questions that were submitted, I'd like to introduce our new secretary of the board, who many of you might recognize, longtime and cherished Bucks Rocker, Erica Babbitt.
Woo!
Hey folks, I am so thrilled to be part of Bucks Rock again. It was a short break. Zoe was there while I wasn't there, and now I'm back again. Maybe she'll be back too. So those of you who don't know me, I was a camper and a CIT and a junior counselor, mostly at the farm from like 68 to 72 of the 1900s era. And I came back in 1978 as a counselor in Girls House, and I ran a puppetry shop, and I helped with the clown shop, and I eventually was the co-runner of the CIT program and then was the head of the clown shop. And I'm so thrilled to see so many of my former campers, kids are here now, so I can officially be like the clown grandma of everybody. That's really fabulous. And I'm really honored to be here. I'm just thrilled that I was asked to be the secretary. And I'm really, really impressed by the job that the board, that the team has done in putting the nonprofit status together and getting Bucks Rock, through the whole COVID mess and setting the groundwork for what is to come, all the great stuff that's to come, and to have a really good summer this summer. So thank you, board, and thank you everybody who is interested in coming this summer. I look forward to seeing you.
Thank you. So next, we're all really excited to have Erica on the board. Just want to say that. Next, Jeff is going to give us the DEI representative on the board. Jeff is going to give us their statement on this policy.
Yeah, I'm Jeff. I'm the DEI chair. So I work with the DEI Council, and we had a lot of discussions about this, about putting a mandate out to the board. Shout out to Collins Hilton, who I see is here. Yeah, we had a lot of discussions about how what's happening in the world currently and what's could happen at Bucks Rock. And we thought a vaccine mandate really was the only way that we could see Bucks Rock working in this unique way. So we proposed it to the board, and we think Antonia and Scott really did a lot of legwork to really put this thing into place that really, we really stand behind this thing because of the work they did, who they talked to, the ACA and CDC guidelines. So yeah, we're really excited with the work that they're doing. And yeah, so shout out to the DEI. We've been together now as a team for about a year. And this is kind of the first thing that we've put forth to the board that's kind of been seen. So we're really excited about this collaboration that we've had so far. So yeah, with that, I'll turn it back to y'all.
Thank you, Jeff. I also want to thank the entirety of the DEI on behalf of the board, because you guys have been really instrumental in certainly this policy and a lot, I'm sure, going forward. What we're gonna do now, though, is we're gonna go with Antonia and Scott as our president and our camp director. This was a really collaborative process. A lot of discussion over the past year led us to this point, but we're gonna have them answer some of these questions that you guys had and go through the policy with you together.
Thank you, Ben. So let's start with our policy. So just right off the top, I'm Scott, Bucks Rocks director. Really happy to be here with Antonia and the board to go through our initial COVID plans. It really feels like a significant step toward opening camp in June. It's been since 2019 since we've had an in-person summer, and I'm so glad that we've been able to develop something firm and informed that will help make Bucks Rock 2022 happen. So our COVID policy is posted all over the place, but it is on our website at bucksrockcamp.org. It is right here. So I'm sure most of you have had the opportunity to go through it, but we're just going to go through some of the highlights just to make sure that everybody is on board. Most important thing right at the start is that all of this is subject to change. Barring an act of God or catastrophe of some point, we plan on having our final COVID policy with much more specifics about the day-to-day of camp complete by May 2022. So look toward that, but this is our initial policy going forward. Most important thing is that all of these policies and restrictions were developed with the best information that we have right now from the ACA and the CDC. We're actually benefiting from the experiences of the camps that were able to open last summer successfully and drawing from what some of those camps did really well. And also learning from what some of the ones that did open that had difficulty with COVID last summer, learning from that as well. So by doing the work now and preparing and having a well-developed and comprehensive plan in place now, we put ourselves in a really good spot to be able to have as close to a normal Bucks Rock experience as possible once we get to camp and settle in. Safety is always number one, but it's also important for us to be able to curate that free, independent, and freedom of choice experience that we've had now. And this is our 80th summer coming up. This is number 80. So get excited. Okay, so we intend for our entire Bucks Rock camp population to be 100% vaccinated this summer from COVID-19 from one of the FDA approved vaccines. So that's Pfizer, Moderna, Johnson & Johnson. That's all of our campers, staff employed on site, and visitors to camp. Boosters will also be required when applicable if the person is eligible and of age. Everyone in the lead up to camp will be asked to self-monitor for 14 days with specific guidelines that we'll have as we get closer to camp, and then test negative up to 3 days before camp. So 1 day fine, 2 days fine, 3 days before camp, test negative, then you can come to camp. If you do not, then we will have policies and procedures about how we proceed at that point, but you have to test negative on that test before you come to camp to be able to travel to camp at all. Okay, Antonia?
So upon arrival, everyone arriving, that includes the people dropping off campers, will take a rapid result test in a separate COVID testing area before they can enter the main campus. Everyone staying at camp, so just campers and staff, would then test again after 3 days. And if we are COVID-free, we plan on a return to a much more normal camp experience. Within those first 3 days, all meals will be served outside, and we will be requiring masks indoors. In the bunks, everyone will wear a mask unless sleeping, brushing their teeth, or showering. If a camper tests positive for COVID from a rapid result test, we will immediately follow that up with a PCR test. They will have to quarantine while we await the results of the PCR. Once that result comes back, we will discuss options with the parents or guardians who will have been kept in the loop throughout. Wait, that doesn't, oh yeah, more on that later. So more specific information about day-to-day life on camp may be addressed tonight, but we will definitely be communicating more information about that as we get closer to camp. But we wanted to lead with this starting policy to help our families make an informed decision about how their summers could include Bucks Rock this summer, 2022.
Okay, great. So if you have having trouble finding where this policy is, it's just Bucks Rock or bucksrockcamp.org or bucksrockcamp.com. They both work. And then you go to office and then it's just COVID policy right here. Click on that and that's where it is. I'm assuming you got here okay because the link to the webinar was here too. But that's where our policy will remain on the website. Okay. So now let's get into some questions. We had a bunch of questions submitted. The first one was about trips off camp. So for those of you that don't know, in a normal summer, each shop does about one trip off camp per summer. So the Metals shop trip has gone to Elephant's Trunk the last few years, the last few summers we had camp, which is it's a flea market, and we go to the movies, and the painting studio has gone to the Brandt Foundation. So there's a bunch of trips. My softball trip, we usually go to minor league baseball game, which is one of the more fun trips on camp that
Not biased at all.
not biased, but so for trips, we hope to be able to go on trips this summer that can social distance and stay isolated as a group or bubble outdoors. Thinking about those CIT trips that we have, because there are 2 CIT trips each summer, tubing down the Farmington River sounds reasonable, where Falcon Ridge Folk Festival, which is the other trip that we've had, may be less so. If the Bank Street Theater in New Milford can ensure that Bucks Rockers are the only ones in the building, then movie trip also sounds very reasonable. Trip to the beach at Lake Warramug, same thing, reasonable. But a trip like the painting studio has done to the Brandt Foundation, that might have to wait till 2023, or Jacob's Pillow dance trip, that kind of thing. Think about it. If we can get a bus, fill the bus with people that have been in the Bucks Rock bubble, go somewhere, unload, do their thing, have a fun trip, get back on the bus, come back without interacting with a lot of other people, then that sounds like a reasonable trip that we could have this summer, but it's just going to have to change in that way. So that's the answer to that question.
Another question that we have gotten was about foreign vaccines and the booster. So as some of you may know, international staff is a really cherished part of the Bucks Rock community. And we plan to have some international staff this summer. But right now, the FDA has not given approval to foreign vaccines, such as the AstraZeneca vaccine. So, and our plan is to only accept FDA-approved vaccines this summer. Fortunately, the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines and boosters seem to be more available now outside the US than they have been. AstraZeneca plus a Pfizer Moderna booster is something that we're actively considering and researching the efficacy of, and we'll have an answer to that very soon. If you have any specific questions about this, please reach out anytime to Bucks Rock at bucksrockcamp.org, which Alec just put in the chat.
Okay, great. Thank you, Antonia. Next question. What specific changes will be made at camp in the day-to-day life? I know that things are going to change a lot in the lead up to camp, when they get to camp, how to prepare for camp, but then once we're at camp, how are things going to be different from the pandemic? So right now we're starting with the idea that those first 3 days will be more restrictive. And then once we're COVID free, we can open things up to feel more like a normal summer. At that point, we will hopefully be able to significantly relax our restrictions, and the amount we'll have to bubble will rely on positivity rates in Litchfield County and Connecticut, as well as updated CDC and ACA recommendations for summer camp. So those new recommendations that will come out in May. After those first 3 days, we do anticipate that shows in the Actors Studio and indoor performance spaces will be 100% masked, except for performers throughout the summer. And then visitors might only be able to attend outdoor performances, but that's just something we're looking at. Like we said before, arrival day, we'll have a COVID testing station separate from camp, probably near visitor parking. Regarding meals, we're planning on having significantly more outdoor seating options available throughout the summer. So seating at the pavilion, the porch, all the time. So people can eat outdoors if they want to. And then for visitors, when they come, they can eat outdoors with their kids. So that's our intention right now in January 2022. We will, of course, be watching everything as we get closer to camp. And we're also in contact with the Connecticut Board of Health and the head epidemiologist from the state of Connecticut. On another note, there are so many ways in which we can get creative about meeting COVID safety health needs right now, things that we haven't thought of. So if you guys have ideas or you've seen things in your experience at school or work or wherever that you feel as though might work at camp, please reach out and let us know. Because, you know, we're reaching out to whoever we can and we're talking to all these people, but, you know, we don't know everything, obviously. So please help us out if you guys have ideas. So that's that question.
Thanks, Scott. So we also got a specific question about the wording in our COVID policy regarding the 3-day quarantine upon testing positive from a rapid result test, which I stuttered on earlier. So here's more information on that. Thank you for this feedback. We want to clarify this statement a little bit as it is a little confusing in the policy, which we will fix on the website. So in this specific circumstance, a person who has tested positive on a rapid test would then immediately be administered a PCR test, probably offsite. After the PCR test, while we wait for those results, they will be quarantined and kept safely engaged. Once those results of the PCR test come back, that will dictate the next step. If the PCR is positive, we will work out how to proceed with their parents. As stated in the policy, if a camper has to miss any amount of camp time because of a positive COVID test, the family will be offered a prorated refund of that unused portion of tuition. If the PCR test is negative, we will follow state and federal health guidelines to make sure that the initial rapid test was truly a false positive. And if it was truly a false positive, that'd be great, because then they'd get to immediately go back to shops. And parents will be kept informed throughout this process, of course. So the next question we got was about staff off-campus rules. So for those of you who don't know, our staff in a normal, typical summer can leave campus on their days off, hours off if necessary, and in the evenings after put to bed, as long as they don't have any duties on camp. This is super important to our program, and it's one of the differences that we're proud of in how we work with our staff at Bucks Rock. In general, we would love for our staff to be allowed off camp, but in the interest of full transparency, the way things are looking right now, it's not likely that we will be able to have an open campus where staff can come and go in their off time as they have in the past. We will be communicating with staff before the summer to discuss this. They will be well aware of what restrictions there will be before they get to camp. An open campus would be really difficult this summer and would significantly impact the integrity of the bubble that we plan on maintaining at camp. We're already brainstorming ideas on how we can give staff opportunities for rest and recharging on campus, as well as connecting with local restaurants for food delivery to help with staff that just needed Starbucks or burrito from Primo's on any given day. We're still considering options for days off and how staff could quarantine upon return, like the first 3 days of camp. but this will likely be very restricted. Again, if you have ideas, please reach out with your suggestions. We understand how important it is. I cannot stress this enough. We understand how important it is for our staff to be able to have time off that really feels like time off. It's impossible for staff to be able to be as present and engaged for the campers during shop hours or at the bunk as they want to be if they feel like they're on all the time. And this is one of the areas where it's on us to do the work now to set something up for our staff in the summer that will be supportive and realistic. Another specific question we got was, if a staff member tests positive and has to quarantine, will their pay be docked for the days not worked? The answer is no, and their focus should be on recovering. There should be no incentive to hide not feeling well this summer. Scott?
Thank you. Next question was the sole non-COVID related question that we got, which is about the music program and the MuShed, and if the MuShed program can have more structure and be a little bit more serious in campers' approach to study. So the answer there is that, our music program is called the MuShed, the Music Shed, and our staff they're expertly trained and excellent musicians and teachers, and they're ready to work with students across the spectrum of music need. So in our program, we have individual lessons, ensembles, and performances. The ensembles are regular and considerable, but they're not typically as structured as maybe some other places are because of the freedom of choice nature of camp. At Bucks Rock, campers are free to create that structure for themselves. If a camper wants to study an instrument every day and have a more strict study and rehearsal schedule, that's entirely up to them. And many do just that. If a camper commits to something like pit band or a rock cafe performance, we strongly encourage those campers to honor those commitments, but aside from meals, staying on campus, not hanging out in the bunks during shop hours, following our rules, and returning to the bunk and put to bed, nothing at Bucks Rock is mandatory. And to answer a related question regarding possible COVID restriction on singing, that there might be some restriction, can we have singing at camp this summer? I can definitively say, now and forever, singing is allowed at Bucks Rock. The closest to any kind of art restriction that we have is when we physically did the musical Footloose, and the characters in the play talked about how people in that made up town outlawed dancing. So that's the closest that we'll get to outlawing any kind of art. So summer 2022, there will be both singing and dancing allowed at Bucks Rock. So don't worry about that. Okay, and then this is our last question, and it's about visitors to camp and campers getting signed out off campus. So Bucks Rock has always been, and whether or not people can visit and whether or not campers can get signed out to go off camp. Bucks Rock has always been more or less an open campus after that first week where visitors can come whenever, pretty much. We would love to allow visitors at camp, and we are planning on it. Best case scenario is visitors are allowed, but have to register before arrival, show proof of vaccination upon arrival, and wear a mask when social distancing isn't possible. We plan on having N95s and surgical masks on hand at camp. Some fair expectations will be that visitors will have to follow the rules of Bucks Rock's population the first 3 days of each session. Things like masks, wearing masks inside, meals eaten outside, no entrance to the dining hall at all. And additionally, no entrance into the bunks. So that's something that's a little bit more restrictive, is that people that visit won't be able to go into the bunks. Visitors would be able to attend shows, but there may be a restriction for the actor studio or indoor performance spaces. The tougher question relates to how our typical rules about being signed off camp relate to the summer. Normally campers can be signed out as long as they return before put to bed, or even stay out until the next day. This summer, it's unlikely that campers will be able to be signed out to leave camp with a visitor. As always, visitors can bring food to camp to eat with their kids on campus and all that outdoor seating that we're going to have available. But again, this will depend more specifically when we get closer to camp on local positivity rates and CDC recommendations, but we'll probably have to amend or restrict those rules for summer 2022. It's also remember that all of this is subject to change. The way that we're conceptualizing it is We've got the bubble that we're creating on camp of everybody that's living on camp and staying on camp and working on camp. And then how those people can relax their restrictions once they're in that bubble and we know everybody's clear. And then the people that are visiting, the limited amount of people that are visiting from the outside and the restrictions on those people that have to stick to those more strict rules, wearing masks, social distancing, and wearing good masks, not just cloth masks. So those surgical masks or N95s, and eating outside, staying out of the dining hall and staying out of indoor spaces like bunks. Okay. So that's where we're at right now. But again, subject to change.
So before we wrap up, here are some topics to consider. After that first 3 days settling in period, we do truly anticipate the day-to-day of camp returning to some semblance of what normal Bucks Rock feels like, assuming that we are COVID-free at that point. But depending on how things go between now and the summer, the safety of everyone at camp is our biggest priority. Despite our frustrations, sadness, and abundance of extremely dedicated and loving staff that were ready to make the last 2 summers work in person in some capacity, we are proud of our decision to go virtual. So while right now we are so hopeful and so excited for the return to in-person, we will of course adjust accordingly as things change. And those changes might make things like off-campus trips or activities more restricted, or things on camp a little more restrictive or bubble-like throughout the summer. At this point, pods are not on the table for us. We do not feel like Bucks Rock would work with separate pods that travel together and isolate. Bucks Rock has always been about community and togetherness, and freedom of choice. And we feel that as though it wouldn't be Bucks Rock with that level of restriction or group isolation at camp.
And on a final note, any COVID-related changes are just that, they're COVID-related. I've had a few people ask me if we're going to use the pandemic as an excuse to change some of the things that make Bucks Rock different, like open visitation or camper signouts or freedom of choice or staff time off camp trips, etc. And I speak for all of us when I say that we're all looking forward to a summer when we can go back, all the way back, safely, of course, to the way Bucks Rock life has always been. The pandemic, as we all know, continues to be present and dangerous, and now, 3 years later, is still forcing us to make changes to our program to keep us all safe. There are some aspects of camp that have been part of what makes Bucks Rock special, but in a pandemic summer, we're going to have to adjust some of our structure to make sure that we're all safe. We fully intend on bringing everything back in a future summer when it is safe to do so. We all feel privileged here to have a board and a president and an alumni community and parents and our current camper population of both new and returning campers that are in this with us to make Bucks Rock happen this summer. And after a long few years, we're here and we could not be more excited for June. So,
and that's a wrap. That's a wrap, people. I just want to say thank you for everybody who can come tonight, and all of you who submitted questions. And well, another one of these is going to be held around late February, so keep your eyes out on all Bucks Rock social media for that. It's another town hall, and as usual, we'll definitely keep you posted on everything as we get closer to the 80th summer at Bucks Rock in person. And that's all.
with lots of radio.
You got that right, Jack.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks again. Thanks again.
Happy New
Thank
Year.
you.
Everyone, more fun to come.
Yep. Welcome, Erica.
Look, some of
Thank
those
you.
questions in the chat, we will address. We have the chat saved and your names, and so we can reach out to you personally, but they all will be addressed soon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Good night, guys.
Good night.
Good night.
Weekend.
Bye.